Welcome back, everybody. We're kicking off, or we're ending our weekend. This is Sunday, even though this will be up tomorrow. But we're ending our weekend with yet another Canadian actor. I love doing that. So I think you're the fifth or sixth interview that I've done this year already, and we're two Canadian actors for four American actors,
Wow.
U.S. actors. So like the percentage is smaller. Usually it's about 30 to 40% of Canadian actors. So I'm gonna try to work on it. So please welcome to the program a wonderful Canadian actor, theatrical. He's also done a ton of stuff on screen. His voice, I am absolutely in love with. So we're going to talk about some of the voiceover stuff that he's done. Please welcome Kyle McDonald.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Yeah, listen, and I've mentioned this to you in a pre-chat, but as I was listening to your voice, and people, if you agree with me, please let me know and put it down below the video. But your vocal quality, something really reminds me of Benedict Cumberbatch. So you've heard that before, correct?
Yeah. As I did mention, there was a friend of mine who was kind of ribbing me, saying that I'm the poor man's Benedict Cumberbatch. My rates are much lower. So if you are looking for Benedict and you're on a budget, I am your man.
And that's where I was going with this, because Benedict is very busy, so that should open up some doors for you. Hopefully, we'll spread that if you want. You being the Benedict Cumberbatch alternative.
Yes, that works for me. Also, I think my American dialect is just a hair better than his. He's very good, but I think I can edge him out on that.
I think so. And then people have to pay less for travel because he's in the UK, although I think he's UK and LA. So you're up north. It's easier for you to travel. You can be there.
Yeah. Also, I'm just cheaper. It's like a meal. Okay, I'll do it for a meal. This is how it is around here.
It's very cool. Now, where in Canada are you in? Are you in Toronto?
Yep, I'm in Toronto. It's sort of there's Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. These are the major hubs. Vancouver's on the west coast. They're a little more LA connected. I'm not disinterested in working out there. Montreal I love, but I do speak French, but I'm not full francophone. And it's very, very cold there, and for me that's a real deciding factor.
Yeah, well, I'm in Chicago, so Toronto and Chicago are similar in terms of kind of look and feel and weather. So it's snowing for us right now. I don't know if it's snowing for you there.
It is not. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm personally thrilled about this. It's the harbinger of the end and climate change and all that, but I am enjoying the fact that it's looking kind of like March out there. It's not so bad.
Very nice. Well, I hope it stays that way for you. I don't know if the wind,
through a whole year without snow, like, oh, it's a miracle. It's the miracle we all need.
Yeah. Have you been to Chicago? Because going to Toronto, I've been to Toronto I think 3 or 4 times, and it reminded me of Chicago in a lot of ways. Have you had similar experiences?
I have not. I haven't had a chance to make it to Chicago. I've done New York, and I've done some of the Carolinas and Florida, and I've been to LA. It's on the list. Just there hasn't been a lot of time for travel lately, so it's on the list. I'd love to go. Obviously,
I think you'll enjoy it. Again, you've done a lot of theater. You obviously have a very strong voice. So there's a lot of there's the Civic Opera here in Chicago that you may enjoy. There are a lot of theaters here you like, and then it'll remind you of Toronto, at least the lakefront portion of it, because it has a similar feel. So I think you like it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. There's also, I'm building a few shows of my own that I would love to tour. So, I mean, if Chicago will have me, I will gladly go.
Yeah, well, there are lots of theaters, and once they open up, hopefully that'll become a possibility for you. So, speaking of you building things, and let's kind of put things in buckets. Actors, some actors tend to specialize, some actors go all across the spectrum. From my research on you, you seem to go all across the spectrum, from voiceover, commercials, theater, singing, so musical theater, and I don't know if I would be correct in saying this, but opera, because you do opera, and then on-screen stuff. So you kind of go the full gamut. Do you dance? Is that the
that is the one thing I don't like doing. I really don't like dancing. And every time I have been moved into opera in the last 5 or 6 years, which I'm enjoying. And there's a company that I like to work with, but the director just loves making his performers dance, and it just drives me crazy. And also doing a lot of Shakespeare. You can't get through a Shakespeare without like doing a minuet or a gavotte or something, right? I'm like, oh man. So I don't, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
All right. Well, then there's one thing that you don't do, or at least prefer not to. So
Yeah.
let's start breaking that gamut down. And what is your preference? Is there a preference, or you kind of like moving around and you enjoy all aspects?
You know, I like it all, and I started as an actor, and it's something I wanted to do since I was like 5 years old. I just, whatever it was, I just loved it. And I've sort of been looking at why, why anyone loves it. Some people like to do it because they can express themselves, right, in a way that's not them, and I think there's something to that. And others do it because they express themselves perfectly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you've done some acting. Obviously, you love it. So, what is it about acting that you love?
For me, the love of acting started with being when I was a kid, because that's when it started for me. I knew that I was an actor. I knew that that was going to be my life, and that's the only thing I was going to focus on. And then other things came. But with acting, it was the ability to be somebody else and play different characters and try out things that are outside of kind of my norm. And then it evolved into a deeper understanding of being an actor allows me to kind of live multiple lives in one. Because I will not be, a doctor in this lifetime. I will not be a lawyer in this lifetime. I will not be a firefighter in this lifetime. I will not be in, 18th century France in this lifetime. Allowing myself to kind of step in and put that on and experience a different lifetime into one. So that became kind of the aspect that I enjoyed the most. So that was my love of acting and where it comes from. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's dead on. That sense of, in a way, being able to do anything, and in the limited time that we have, and in a sense, it's like all the best parts, right? You get to play a doctor on TV, and as one of those actors, you will get to learn a lot about medical industries you go through, but you skip like the 6 years, and then it's like all the fun stuff, right? But there is that, yeah, that sense of, and we sort of talk about all the different things that I'm doing, and I wonder if that's just sort of the root of the same impulse. Like, how many things can I get my hands dirty with, right? And oftentimes we have these desires, and we kind of retroactively try to apply meaning to them, and sometimes they're just there. It's reconstruction. So that, yeah. And I also want to get your opinion on this. So yeah, because that's kind of old school acting, right? That's like the Chekhov school where you'd really go in and do character work. And that does still exist. And I'd say it exists a little more on stage, but we see on camera now that it's not, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I'm seeing. It's not as open to you as a performer exploring the various different kinds of anything, right?
Yeah, because it's all industry, it's money driven. So there is a particular formula that they're trying to hit, and then there's an actor that fits well into that formula, and that's what they want. So whether the actor is just being themselves, or they're stepping a little bit outside of it, or they're incredible and at separating themselves and being that character that people think is themselves, and that's what they play with. But oftentimes you don't get a chance to do that. So what you do is you do indies, and then in indies, or you write your own material, and that's where you really get a chance to kind of explore and play, because only a few of the top actors really get a chance to be character actors. And I started out wanting to be character actor. And I found that in auditions that was actually working against me, because they're not interested in you being a character. They're just interested in who are you? Are you a good guy? Can you do it? Are you believable in this particular role? Especially when it comes to co-stars or anything small, kind of roles that just move the story along. Don't really go full out, because they don't need to see your range. They need you walk in. Are you somebody who I can believe is a business person? Yes. Are you a dad? Yeah, I believe that. Okay, moving on. Right? They don't have time. They don't need to explore it. So there are very few projects right now, kind of in big productions, that allow character actors to work. So that's where the indies come in. That's why I love indies.
Yeah, and so that's a great point too, and that's sort of the reason that sort of inevitably I've been drawn down the course of making a lot of my own material. I
Yeah.
mean, as a younger man, actually I started out pretty well in theater, and I booked some stuff early out of school, but I had the voice, and it wasn't quite what it is now, but it wasn't far off.
Mhm.
And I was also kind of a weird kid too, because like I was like 30 pounds lighter, and I had this voice, and I just
Mhm.
nothing made sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I love to go for the character stuff. They're like, yeah, but you're like 20, you look like a fetus, and there's just no way this is going to work for you. And I was like, but, and so it's like all these years where I was just sort of, and that's why Shakespeare worked really well for me, because
Yeah.
it's timeless in a way, right? Like it's all very weird to begin with. So
Yes.
people who look strange or have strange sounds or like things don't connect so well, it's like a real asset.
Yeah.
But in terms of television, it's just people are like, what? And if they don't know you, obviously we all have a different time.
Of
But
course.
that sense of being you and what that means is so interesting to me
Mhm.
because, I'm happy to go down the theoretical road here. But I remember I was doing a few on-camera classes because I'm like, okay, I want to refresh my knowledge here, like what's going on. And the takes where I was actually myself, that's
Yep.
when I got the most notes to like stop it. They're like, that's way too this or let's do that. I'm like, okay, I'm happy to refine.
Mhm.
And it's like, this is a trap though, because if I do me, there's very few things it works for. And that might be true of all of us, right? We're all different instruments. I don't know if you found this. There's very
Mhm.
few things that work for me. Like if I, like, when you go for a daily role or for like an actor, like a few lines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the lead of the damn show. Just do your job, say your
Mhm.
lines and get out. But even like I go for a lot of cops because I kind of have the look.
Yeah.
And then it just they're like, that's weird. Like I'm just being me. So then you got to put on a thing, and they're like, well, but there's this other guy here who's just like that thing. So like
Yeah.
there's all these interesting layers where if you're dealing with character in a
Mhm.
sense, like you said, it can be kind of a hindrance. And obviously once you develop and people get to know you, they're more willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
I mean, in speaking with other people on this program and speaking with actors generally, have you found that people have observed this, or is there any trends that you've seen?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of auditioning, the trend that definitely has come out is that, and again, this is not a kids program, so we can use the appropriate language.
Great.
The actors that seem to start booking get to a point of don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
That's that plateau where you say, I don't worry about what it is that the casting director is looking
Yeah.
for. I'm
Yeah.
just going to do it the way that I see it, and that's it. So you're not being a jerk about it. You're being professional, but you make your choices. You have multiple choices, and you can take direction because hopefully you'll get some comments and get an opportunity to do it differently.
Mm.
But you need to get to a point where this is mine. I own it. I'm coming in. I'm doing it, and I'm going to be happy with it. And
Yep.
that's where the people start booking. So a lot of the acting classes and everything else become actually a hindrance because we have so much crap put onto us that
Yep.
it's hard to decipher and hard to really kind of be true and be grounded and be you. That's where the other side emerges of forget everything and just be you. Be you, be believable in this particular circumstance. So then the actors start asking themselves the question of who is me?
Yeah.
And which part of me, because me is something that changes over time, and it
Yeah.
changes based on how I feel and what happened to me yesterday. And I just got stuck in traffic and I'm running late. So that me, is that the version that they want to see? So you get in your head, and then it's really difficult to get out. So what I have done, and this is my particular approach, when I approach characters, I go back to something that, God, I forget his name all the time. I'll remember. A wonderful Oscar-winning actor who gets complimented on all these varied characters that he plays, and he says, "People, I appreciate the compliments, but this is just me, right? These are different aspects of me. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to create something outside of myself. This is all within." So I took that, and then another comment that I received from a friend of mine who is not in the acting world. And when she was looking at kind of my auditions and stuff, she's like, you know what? I mean, these are good, but I would just want to watch you. You're an interesting person. I want to watch you on camera. I don't need to see something else. I'm like, you know what? Okay, getting back to who I am. And then I found a way to kind of meld that together. So what I do and my approach to character work is I start looking at, what is needed, right? Who is this, man that I'm going to be playing and then or auditioning for. And then I go into myself. So I kind of look at it as a tree, right? So there's the tree. This is me. This is my, reality with all of my branches. And then I find a time in the past where something could have happened, and instead of going this way, I would have gone this way, and then I would have become that person that I'm going to be playing. So I find that alternate reality version of me, and that allows me to continue being grounded, continue being myself, continue knowing exactly what my circumstances are, but then the emotions and all of the history and imagination work is so easy because, yeah, you know what? If I dated this particular girl, her dad was in the military, then I would have joined the military because he would have been that career. We would have gotten married. The whole thing just kind of spaces out. And all of a sudden, the Alan that I know in an alternate reality feels like an Alan who's a major in the army. And I live that, and it's very easy to snap into that, and it's very easy to snap back out, which is my other thing of, right, you put on heavy characters, how the hell do you get out of them? So it's easy because I know this is me. This is an alternate version. Okay, I know how to get there. So when people are saying be yourself, I am myself. I'm just a altered version of myself that still feels real. So that way I can still act and I can still put on stuff and I can add and I can remove things that don't make sense, but I'm still basically me because I look like me.
Yeah, you're you.
Yeah. So when I walk into a room, people are going to be receiving that information of, okay, he looks like this, I would buy him as this, this, and this before I say anything, right? So I can't do anything about that, nor do I want to, because me is me, right? And it's different from everybody else. So then it's just, how do I connect to that particular character and how do I make it grounded? So that over time, over whatever 140 something interviews that I've done, that started to emerge as an approach, and then I used it in order to audition. I don't know if I booked those roles, but I know that when I submitted them and when I was looking at the footage, I saw 3 distinct characters that I buy. Yeah. And to me was, okay, that works. That's all I need.
Yeah, and I, that's the thing I discovered as well, is that sense of when I was younger, and it's harder too, because this is good for younger actors to know. Mm-hmm. I found that, I'm a little older. When I was coming up, there was still some of that stage tradition, still some of that old character tradition. Now film has become hyper natural, I think, and you probably agree, right? People are like talking like someone's this far away, and so it's all very subtle and very fine. And in a sense, it's like you only have the thing that you are, right? And I think as you develop over time and you collect experience and understanding about relationships, it does get a little easier because you have more to draw from. And that's good what you're saying, because I hang out with a lot of young performers, and there's a lot of them because schools are just pumping them out and everyone wants to be an actor, and it's like this crazy stuff. Like I think the most recent stats about this are in millennials, young millennials in IGN, their top listed profession is YouTube influencer. Mm-hmm. So there's a real thirst for fame and notoriety going. It's not necessarily new. And I think with us, it started, we're like, yeah, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a rock star, right? And then the grind slowly, it gets to you. So to them, it hits them really hard. It's like, well, guys, look, there's a ton of people in the market, more than there has ever been before. Yeah. And honestly, like, you just have to, exactly what you said, you just have to find what you are, which I think is the work of acting, honestly, and art in general. The reason I went to theater school, and I don't recommend it for everybody, but what was really good for me was that I really had to sit and like go through my neurons, right? How do I, like, who am I? How do I work with this? And there was a lot of discoveries that I made there that I'm like, oh, wow. Because I would do scenes and they're like, we want you to be more vulnerable. I'm like, okay. I literally had no idea what that meant. It was just, there was experiences like that I didn't just have access to in my being, right? And it's frustrating for them, but I'm like, I'm just being me, man. But over time, I was able to make those connections like, oh, that's what that's about. And again, that's part of aging. But to the young ones, I always say, look, it's a real race. The best thing to do is start the second you're out of the womb, you know, but if you don't have that, figure out who you are, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, and do it again. And then, like you said, you got to let it go. It's like, no fucks given. You go in, you do your thing, and you're like, that was that. And the reality is there's going to be years of dry. Could be many years of dry. They're going to be, you might have to have another job. In fact, you probably will, you know, like it's just, it's a very tough reality. I don't want to be a downer about it. And I love talking about it, but it's like really though, like I really want people to understand, like it doesn't, you don't just start out at the top in most cases.
Yeah, it's very few people, and you know, I grew up playing tennis. Tennis is my sport. I was good at it. I wasn't good enough to be a pro, but I thought, you know, certain things that I had were professional level, other things were not. And then, like in any sport, if you're not focused on this, and if you're not doing this, you know, 3-4 hours every day with professionals who are going to get you to that next level, it's just not going to happen. And even if you do that, it's likely not going to happen. But even if I did all of that and I wasn't in the top 100 of the players in the world, which is a incredible thing to achieve, I wouldn't be making money.
No.
So acting is the same thing. There are millions of actors out there. There are millions of talented people out there. How many people actually make a living at this? And a living that allows them to actually have savings and ability not to work for a year when it's COVID and be okay with that? There are hundreds, millions. And that's it. So that's the reality. And once people understand that reality, then the question is, why do you do it? And you look like, why do you love it? Because it's either you or it's not. And if it's not a part of who you are and you're doing this for, you know, reasons like fame or something that is not kind of just ingrained in you of, I cannot not do it, because don't do it, then a part of me is missing, then you just go do something else. You'll be happier and a more member of society. So you're either like, I always go back to this, and you know, my audience has heard this before, but in high school, one of my best friends at that time was about to go on a date, and you know, he knew that, you know, I'm a gentleman, I am, you know, this sensitive type, I'm the, you know, the guy that knows how to open doors and do things. So he sat me down. He's like, dude, okay, I have a date in half an hour. You know, teach me how to be a gentleman. Like, okay, you either are or you're not. You know, I can tell you to open the door, you know, and I can tell you to hold her hand. I can tell you to, you know, put the chair, you know, help the lady to the chair, but you're not going to become a gentleman. You either are or you're not. Same thing with acting. You either are or you're not. And then the other things are luck, hard work, and opportunity.
Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. Let's follow that thread a little bit. This is like, there's been so many things on which I've changed my mind almost to a 180 in the last 10 years. Part of my thing is like, I like getting into a lot of trouble with different stuff. So I love art, I love literature. And again, my thing, and people will ask, like, what's the best thing to be an artist? I'm like, read the great works and read about interesting things you know nothing about. So my big thing has been like physics, biology, social science, chemistry. I'm like, that's not going to happen for me. But like geology, so all the sciences, you know, in another life, I want to be a scientist, but it's not going to happen. I'm okay with that. I'm happy to read it. But a lot of the stuff about personality sciences absolutely enthralled me, because it really starts to make clear why some things are in us and some things aren't. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay, did you ever watch Luke Cage?
Yeah.
Okay, that lead actor, that beautiful man. You know, I hope you get him on the show, but he is so handsome and so charming, and he's so kind.
Yeah.
And like he's a real presence. But I don't know if he's ever been murderously angry one day in his life. You know what I mean? Like and again, I see him and I'm like, I don't know if that's in him. Now, you know, it's a show and we're okay with that. But you look at someone like Daniel Day-Lewis and almost anything, but There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
And the stare he gets after the guy confesses, sorry, spoilers, but it's been like a decade, so too bad. The look he gets after the brother confesses he's not his brother, I'm like, there's a man who has experienced a day in his life where he plotted through killing someone. Now, I'm not saying he did it, of course not. Like, this is the thing. We have to be able to go to ugly, ugly places, right? I remember when I was developing, I was doing this play called 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. This is the great, dude, the era after Shakespeare's brilliant, but there's this era after Shakespeare where it's like poetry, but it's like pornography of violence. It's like Stephen King meets Shakespeare. It's amazing. Crazy stories. This one's about this woman who basically it's this weird plot where she's in love with this guy and this other dude is like her suitor and she has to marry him and there's like an affair and she gets somebody to defile. Just all these things, they're insane. So this one, you know, I was the husband who, okay, it was Romeo and Juliet with twins. Okay. Sure. So the twins were in love.
Yeah.
Sexually, like illicitly. First, you know, right? So it's like Romeo and Juliet with twins. You're like, what? That's the type of stuff. So read it. It's amazing. So I was the husband to this unfortunate twin affair. And there's this big blowout scene where he just is just like, how could you do this? Da-da. And I had all the anger for that, but there was a lot of like the heartbreak that I was missing. And I honestly took a damn weekend to just like roll on my floor and be like, oh, the things people, right? Like trying to find a way to open those circuits of like just the deep, deep pain. And it actually worked, right? And from there it developed, but it's like, that wasn't necessarily available to me before. So there's obviously some plasticity, but personality science and why there's certain things that are really hard for me and then other things for others that are super easy, right? Like the Luke Cage example, like that guy, I'm sure his compassion, I'm like, I would have to work to get there. Not that I'm not necessarily a discompassionate person, but I'm a little harder, right? I'm a little more in the Christian Bale camp style of actors. You know, sometimes you're like, ooh, there's some real shards back there. And the movie I did with Bobby, who you interviewed, The Market, was this kind of volatile, like psychopathic character. And yeah.
Psycho.
Yeah, but so in a sense, and I would, you know, I'd love to put them side by side, and obviously it's amazing work, and it's our humble little feature. But then you said earlier, not taking it home. That was interesting. I lived with that role for about 4 years on and off, and I would be at the gym, and my friends would be like, "Are you on cocaine?" I'm like, "No, man, I don't do drugs. I don't do those." Right? But I was so, even emotionally. For sure reform some of my neurons. It lives with you. Sorry, I've gone off now, but personality science and how, in a sense, you have to play to what you are. And then I think you can start to branch. There's this idea that a lot, and I've dated young actors and I have young actor friends, and there's this idea that you have to be everything. So for you, you're like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, yes, it is. But to a 22-year-old or 24-year-old, based on the academy or whatever, there's this idea that you have to be able to do it all. I'm like, it's just not feasible. So find out who you are, what you're good at, and nail that. And then, when people trust you, you can start trying to round it out. It's like when I did voiceover, I started with this. When I started, I was 24. My competition was 60. I managed to carve out a path there, but no one would hear me for anything except this. And it took about 12 years of getting casting directors to like me. Then I could be like, hey, maybe I can try out my suburban dad voice, right? And I could get this guy going. He's like 32. He's got like 1.5 kids. He's got a minivan. Like he has a little cottage, right? and some other things, and then they started listening. So I ended up, and it doubled the amount I could have, but they wouldn't hear it before. So,
Yeah.
you know, the advice portion is, maybe this has been covered, but
Mhm.
find out you, do you, and then once you get everyone's trust, I think you can start to really push the boundaries, which is kind of sad because you want to play, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And that's where I come back to indies. Do indies. You know,
Yeah.
if you're in acting because you want to make a lot of money, get out of acting.
Yes,
Uh,
that's true,
because if you want to have the opportunity to play with stuff, go do student films.
yeah. Yes.
Go do all sorts of things that are readily available to you. You're not going to make money at all, or you're going to make very little money, but
Yep.
it'll be good for your development and it'll be good for your soul.
Yeah.
So that. But I completely agree with you. I had Gerald Webb on, and I think it was Gerald Webb who kind of used that phrase first for me anyway. He said, own the box. When Gerald came out, they all wanted him to play cops and FBI, and that was his box. And he wanted to do other stuff. And he said, you know what? If this is how you see me, I'm going to own this box. And then once you own the box, then you can start going outside of it because people know you, they trust you, they want to give you other stuff, which is what he does for other people as well. He enjoys now as a producer, he added that to his repertoire. He enjoys giving people an opportunity to do other roles that have nothing to do with what the box is.
Yeah.
And that allows them because he was doing a lot of films that would be, let's say, B kind of level movies, and he was getting stars for them. The way that he was getting stars is because he allowed them to do something that they don't normally get cast to do. So that's where he's the guy, you know, behind Sharknado and all the other movies. Gerald is awesome. I love Gerald. By the way, you know, for actors, guys, the one of the interviews that you should really listen to or watch, depending if you're podcasting or watching on YouTube, is Gerald Webb. I will link it to this video, so check it out as well because these are the types of conversations we're having. So I'm gonna make a note, Gerald Webb link before I forget. Anyway, so yeah, I see your cat in the background.
He's trying to steal the show here. I'm like, buddy, you're out of frame.
Yeah. What's your cat's name?
His name is Acheron.
Acheron. All right.
Acheron, which is the tributary river that flows from the upper world down into Hades.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Styx, but then that's the band. And
Yeah.
the other rivers of hell are Cocytus and Phlegethon. So I'm like, Acheron it is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This is my cat, Cocytus. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't have a lot of friends. I'm like, not anymore.
That's awesome.
So, okay, we were talking about producing a little bit. Did you want to move on to that? Or actually, it looked like you had a thought there that was budding. So why don't you let that blossom?
The thought that keeps coming back to me again is, you know, I can only imagine you being a, you know, a young kid with that voice and not being able to kind of get as many jobs as you should have been getting outside of, you know, voiceover.
Yes.
But where the thought that kept always coming back to me throughout this interview is that your whole career is ahead of you because you're growing into that voice, and the older you get, the more it's going to play and the more opportunities you're going to be getting. So, you know, voiceover should be something that you will be able to do for the rest of your life. And then, you know, on screen, obviously theater, but on screen should be more and more and more for you as you get older.
I hope so. I mean, this is the great. It's kind of a catch-22, but the sunk cost fallacy, right? You know, I've thought about it a few times. Look, the last few years have been very good to me, so I'm not going to complain. In a sense, like I'm not a star, but I am making my living off being a performer, right? And it's mostly voiceover, but there's other stuff too. So I'm not living spectacularly, but I'm a grinder, and it's like, okay, there is something here, and I'm not opposed to taking on other jobs if they come my way, but right now I'm okay. So it's like always this question, like, yeah, you're right. We have the rest of our lives, essentially, and you just never know. Everyone's like, oh, Morgan Freeman didn't do stuff till he was like 3,000 years old. I'm like, well, I have a feeling he was probably around before that, but the point is taken, right? And you just never know, and that's the thing. So I think your approach of like, look, make peace with the fact that you may not make a living at it. Go out there, do it, and if it catches, it catches, and then problem solved. And if not, you presumably got yourself another career, etc., that pay the bills, keep the lights on, keep yourself fed, raise a family.
Right.
You know, have a family. Don't underestimate the joys that can bring, right? So yes, aging into it, let us hope. Yeah, voiceover's been kind, of course. Whoa, he's weighing in. What's going on?
Well, he wants to do a duet.
Say hello.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Wow,
Okay.
a cat that listens to you? That's awesome.
No, and people are gonna be like, could you just get back to the interview, please? I'm like, meet my cat.
Hello.
Putting
Hi.
him in my
Oh, my
garbage.
goodness. Very
There
great.
you go, buddy. Get out of here. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You never know. And so this is why, and it's what I tell everyone, like, you gotta love it, but get
Mhm.
another job. I know this is like the downer stream, but I don't know if people are talking about
This is the reality stream, and this is
it.
why
Okay.
this is here. One of the
Yeah.
first questions, and we'll come back to you in a second, but one of the first questions I asked the first interview that I had was with Michael Kostroff. And one of the questions was, okay, let's talk reality, right? You've been in a ton of stuff. You keep booking. We've seen you everywhere. Are you making a living at this? And if it stops, are you going to be okay, right? It's the reality. It's not a downer. People need to understand what the life is really like if they choose to pursue it. And people who are in the industry already know this to be true, and sometimes they need to hear it because they may get lost in the process. So please continue.
Okay. And I think it's important, and not, there's the down element, but it's actually letting yourself off the hook. Like there's a real, we won't spend too much time on this because I think we'll talk about more interesting things, but this is our public service announcement part of the cast, right? Especially to younger performers, there's no shame in having a job or a side job. It's just the way it's going to be. And transitioning to the producer phase now, the thing I've noticed, and you know what, I probably suffered from this a bit too, and it's a lesson I wish I had learned a bit younger, because some of my success in theater, et cetera, is not entirely to do with the mismatch. I was a fairly brash person, and I wasn't always aware of how sensitive other people are. It just didn't occur to me. And that's one of the things that I've learned in time, like, oh, Facebook actually really taught me how there's a storm sometimes in people's heads.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know. So I would just ride roughshod. I'd be like, ha, 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 galloping along. People are like, why are you yelling? I'm like, I'm not. I'm just speaking. Right? Just, I was like, this is a great time. But they're like, oh, they need medication. Right? So I've learned to dial that shit down.
Yeah.
But now being on the other side of the table, there is a fatal entitlement that a lot of young people have, right? And we're dealing with it in the opera world. It's a little more in theater than I would say film, though it's certainly still there. The sense that you're owed anything has to evaporate.
Right.
Now, it seems obvious to say, but everything in life tells us that young people are entitled to everything. It's not their fault, right? Every message, every show, teachers have no authority, da 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 da, all the way down the line. We're like, kids, you guys rule everything, which is cool because being young is great and we want to give ourselves opportunities.
Yep.
But it comes with the danger of not understanding how much work it takes to get anything off the ground. And I encourage every young artist to do this: make a short film.
Yeah.
Okay. Make a short film. It's going to cost you a few $100. If you know, you can find kids in school, you can find actor friends. Okay, you can do it for free. Put it together, produce it, really, and then watch the bills stack up when you go to submissions, right? And then you got to feed people, and you start to see all these little things. Even if you're just like, let's just do it on the weekend, man. You're like, okay. Now imagine you have 100 people doing that.
Yeah.
You get a sense real quickly of what priorities are, and it actually comes in, well, like, I don't know if I can do these dates, but maybe we can do these dates. And like after 6 p.m. is not okay for me. I'm like, okay, look, there has to be some room for that. Okay. I'm like, okay, look, we're willing to negotiate, but like, can you make the shoot days? Well, on the shoot day, I have like a 7 p.m. So I have a hard out. And I'm like, unless you're Jennifer Aniston, I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. And you start to see that in the audition room, the sense that people go in and the expectation. Now, again, a lot of people are nervous. I don't want them to project anything or be even more nervous. But the idea that you should be hired or you're owed being hired, if you have this feeling, erase it immediately.
Yeah.
Because you'll start to find that people like you more. It's a crappy thing to say, but when they do, a producer wants someone who's going to make their life easier. right? And I'm now an emerging like middle grade producer. I've received my first grant for an opera I'm putting up. I want to put it up this year, but I'm probably going to push. Thank you. You know, the pressure's on, and I'm not paying nearly as much as I want, of course. Look, it's decent. It's pretty good. I want more, but there's a lot of shortcuts I have to take, and there's a lot of like people I have to assuage, and it's a very complicated thing. And the performers who start to like there was one great singer I wanted to work with, and she just kept giving me, well, I teach that week. I'm like, yeah, okay. But so we have 3 shows, and 1 week before we have to do our staging rehearsals. Okay. So the nice thing about opera kind of is people know the music already, and you come in and blast through. Now, this particular opera, there's a lot of sword fighting, so I need them for a little more. Everyone knows that. But she was like giving me those, and I'm like, look, I respect that. You have a business and you built it, but I can't take you here because I can't have my second lead away for 30% of rehearsals. I just can't do that. So, right. But again, then you're like, but you just told me to get a job. I'm like, I know. I know. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Here's the
Yes.
just to your point. Here's the person you're looking at. This person who lost a job that was paying me $80 an hour. It was remote gig, and I lost it because I needed to make time for auditions, and I needed to figure things out, and my mind was elsewhere, and I lost that job. This is, by the time me as an actor makes $160,000 a year, may never ever come. But I lost that job because of acting. So just you understand, it's not an easy thing to do. And then if you family on top of that, you live in a secondary market, like all these things start to pile up. So you just figure out of what can I do, what can I not do, and be okay with it. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, films, there's a bit of an advantage there. I mean, the real key is making time for the audition, right? That's the real key. Now, you can do that with another job because you can pop out over lunch. And now, the one silver lining perhaps to all this COVID rubbish is that self-tapes are probably going to become the norm.
For the most part, I think they are. And,
so you can do that after work, right? Now, I have some problems with that. I think it's good to get new talent in the room with the casting director for many reasons. But an alternative is also this, and we'll see what the fallout of that is. So I think there is a bit of a silver lining coming, and I think more and more things like live performance are going to have to start accommodating the fact that people are going to have day jobs, right? And so I think there may be an industry shift there, because again, like you said, there's like 100 people, or maybe 1,000, whatever. America's a pretty big market, and you have a lot of stars there. So there's probably a few thousand who are doing pretty well, but that's still nothing comparatively to everyone else who's struggling. So yeah, I just want to like get the job, guys. Like, have nice clothes, eat, like visit your damn friends and family, because if you're just like miserable and crooked and cranky and, as the Scottish say, thrawn, when you go into the audition room, you're just going to be like, right? Like, I know. So I hope there's some alleviation there for young people, because it's a tough thing. So okay, anyway, I belabored that point enough.
Yeah, it's a grind, but that's again, there's a part of that I really appreciate, because this business will really filter out people who shouldn't be in the business.
Yeah.
And that part of it I really enjoy, because this is not linear. There is nothing here that we can say, you do this, you're going to become a success. Nope. The only things that make sense are work really hard, be really into it, know that it's going to take a while, and continue working, continue being a professional, and then eventually something may and likely will happen to a certain degree. That's about it.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That is it. So okay, let's talk a little bit more about schmacting, maybe.
Yeah.
Just to throw something out there. So being ourselves, yes, but not entirely, right? Not entirely. Because, for example, I mean, on camera itself has its own craft. So what has your experience been sort of figuring out how that works? And what do they do differently? Like here we are just, we're shooting the breeze and I'm gesturing a lot and I'm raising my voice and like making faces. Like this is not something I would do on camera. Maybe depending on the frame of the character, like if it were a much wider frame, I might be like, wah, but probably not. So in a sense, it's like, this is how I'm just being when I'm relaxing. But we know that we can't exactly transition precisely who we are. So what is your experience with that been like?
It really varies, and it varies on director, and it varies on the project. I grew up, loving the style of acting that Jim Carrey used to do, which is big. So that's what I wanted to do because it's fun, and that was my kind of approach. So I come from that style of acting, and Jim Carrey is incredibly impressive as an actor.
He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
He can go incredibly small and be.
Robin Williams, right?
Yeah, and he can Robin, the same idea. So this is what I wanted to be on screen, and I quickly realized that no, that's not what they're looking for. But
I had about that experience. The day you're like, whoops.
On camera, I had an opportunity to go big, and that's where kind of it really varies. So one of the characters, my favorite character I've ever played, was in a student, indie, where I had to play somebody who's a coke addict. He's a sex addict. He is a motivational speaker and a spokesman for a ED medicine. So this guy is
all of this being true for you.
Yeah, it's perfect casting. It's just they looked at me and I said, "You're the guy."
It's like if you took out the cocaine, you might not have the ED. Just putting it out there.
But this guy was perfect, and it gave me finally an opportunity to just go big because that's who he was. So I could do my full-on thing. What I quickly realized, by the way, from a technical perspective, is you think you're going huge when you're on camera and you're watching it. You're about 40% to 50% less than what you think you were. So that part kind of blew my mind because I thought that I was way bigger than I needed to be, and I was just doing it, having a lot of fun with it. And when I was watching it, it was definitely not as big as that. So on camera, basically, right? It depends on the shot, and you alluded to that, right? So if it's a wide shot, you can go bigger, and then the closer it gets, the more internal is in the eyes, and you can't really do anything else. So the way that I have been working with it in my limited experience, and then my immersion into the world just by doing the show and talking to people who are doing this at a much greater level, is know who you are, remind yourself of the technical aspects of the shot, of the lighting, of the people in it. You have to be proficient and you have to have that experience, but then just dive into that life of whoever you are and be that kind of. You can be thinking about it all the time because then you're not in it. So that part of you that says, okay, I need to put an emphasis on this word, or I need to make sure that these are my lines. Like if that part of you is too much, then the performance is going to suffer. So you have to be prepared, you have to be professional, you have to be experienced in the technical aspects of everything that's happening, the type of shot, where you are, who you're talking to. And the only way that I found that all of that works for me is to remind myself and have reminders. Before I start a scene, it's that, okay, let me close my eyes. All right, who am I? Why am I here? What am I trying to achieve? Who's my person? Okay, getting back into it. Good. Okay, I'm there. Right? If I don't remind myself, there's so much chaos on set. You may be shooting overnights.
Yeah.
You're doing a shot, and then it's an hour before you're doing the same scene in a different shot. Like, if you don't remind yourself, if you don't pace yourself, you're not going to be successful. So the working actors, the people who do this for a living, that's what they have. It's not just the acting part of it, but
No.
they the technical know-how, and they have the experience on how to be on set. All of that stuff is just learning, learning, learning.
This is it. And so, to bring it back, this idea of like, just be yourself. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if people talk a lot about the other thing. I'm like, but it's not though. Because like we just said, there's like, and it's kind of unspoken. Like, you just know, like, yeah, well, okay. Well, and, I'll go on set. And the complaints American directors have with Canadians is typically that we don't have as many hours on set as Americans. So we're kind of bumbling around. Now, I've been sure to take care of that by doing the student films, by doing my own projects. My resume ain't great, but I've had some time, right? And it's like, what's the framing? What's the shot? Like, how are we? I mean, what are we? Who's in the scene? Like, what are they doing? So there's all these little tiny things that we kind of take for granted. And you're right. You just have to do it to learn, right?
Yeah.
You just have to do it to learn. But it is interesting. It's like, just be yourself, but not, right?
Yeah.
Be yourself, but 75%. So I think that's where the craft really comes in.
Yeah.
Right. And again, this, like you said earlier, there's like, for example, opera. Opera is different as a performance style because there are like 3 things that are objective, that are actual measures. Are you on pitch? Can you be heard? And what's your color, the color of your voice? Okay, so these will determine where you fit and sort of what kind of career you're going to have. And there might be one more I might be forgetting. So the opera people, don't be too pissed, but you get the idea. But there are actual objective hurdles here. For acting, there isn't, because it's one of those things that's like, I know it when I see it, and that's really all there is. And and this is why I encourage people, if you're going to go through the hands of many different teachers, because every actor is their own organism and has their own style and their own steps of getting there. For you, visualization is a big part, right? Which is great. And I'm also a visualizer. And in fact, there's evidence to suggest that visualization stimulates the same neurons. I know, not like neuron talk all over the place, but it's important. You can actually, your brain is operating as if it's doing the thing. And they've even found resonances in muscles involved.
Yeah.
So visualizing, and again, I think all the top athletes do this. It is rehearsing itself. Like it's like a little, like a proto version of rehearsal. So the more, and I find personally, you talk about shaping a role. Let's talk about that. But if you don't mind me hijacking this interview.
No, this is a conversation. So absolutely.
So I find that when I get to work on characters that I really love, as time goes on, you develop a bunch of stock characters. You're like, okay, I'm going out for cop number 1, or like, I'm a lawyer here today. And so, you have like a thing like, okay, you got the box, like, you put it out there, like, look, I have 3 lines or 1 line or 5 lines or 6 or whatever. I'm not the lead of the show. I'm just here to move the story. Neat, right? You keep the choices to a relative minimum.
Yep.
But, and this happens a little more on stage perhaps, but if you have a role, I find that, I mean, it sounds dumb to say, but thinking about it, not just the lines, but thinking about it, like you talked about, what did I do? What would happen if I went here? And so you embark on this journey of visualization that shapes it for you. And that's when you make what we call the discoveries, right? The discoveries is like, it's like something you're saying or hearing for the first time ever, which is all very exciting because that's how it has to be, right? You don't want to sound rehearsed. That is also weird, right? As an actor, I don't know if people talk about that much, but I'm like, that's a weird thing.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that's not, and that's not what you would do, right? You're like, oh, bing, you got to discover it, and you have to find a way to make it clear that it's a discovery without being like, boy, I just figured that out now, right? And then doing it again and again and again. Like the thing with, again, the 12-hour days on set. You'll have a scene in the morning. It's just like a whatever fluff. You're like walking. And if you're nice, it's nice and you have like an emotional scene, for some reason they always put that at the end of the damn day. Or no, actually it's worse. They put it first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning, you roll out of bed 5 a.m. being like, oh, why am I doing this? And you get there, and maybe, you know what, maybe they put it at the top and bottoms because you're already volatile from being tired. But you have to do it. That scene between setups, right? They're like, okay, we're gonna get this, and you got to be there for your scene partner. So it's finding the stamina, shaping it, and also like knowing that it's you, but it's not. There's like, that's where the craft is. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people do talk about it, but it's that's, I think, I don't know, how do you teach that? How would you teach that? I mean, if you're going to get a kid who's 19 and you pause right now being like, I want to do this, what would you tell them?
It's not about you, it's about the other person. So that's the first thing that I would teach them, because it took me a while, and not until I started learning Meisner that I really understood what it meant. And I'm like, why the fuck was I not doing this in the first place? Because that's how I normally am, right? Because that's what makes sense. I'm looking at you, right? You're relaxed, and I perceive, because I'm an empath. I get information. So the way that my reaction is going to be, the way that I feel, the energy between us, it's all based on you, and I can just be the receptor of it, and then everything is going to be different. Every take is going to be different because something is going to be different. Then it gets more complicated. Joanna Vanderham, who I absolutely adore, she's an incredible actress. I was asking her the question because watching Warrior, one of my favorite shows, plug Warrior, everybody please go watch it on HBO Max. Watching her being surprised, it's like a brain acting orgasm for me, because I know that's not the first take. So that may be, I don't know, maybe 16th take, and she's still surprised. And I asked her that question, how can you do this? How can you be so surprised and so moved? And then she threw another thing that I didn't even anticipate. She's like, yeah, on top of that, when you're doing extreme close-ups, you don't have the other person to react to, because you just have the camera. I'm like, shit, I didn't even think about that. So the way that she does it, aside from just being incredibly talented and trained, she remembers and she imagines. She remembers kind of the face and the facial features and of the person that she's supposed to be talking to, and then that's where the imagination kind of work melds into it. So the first thing that I would tell to the people is, it's not about you in the scene, it's about the other person. And focus on them, because off of that, everything is going to start playing. So that's the first thing, right?
Here's what I'd add to that, though, just before we continue. So, yes, but having been around the block a few times, sometimes you are opposite a vacuum, okay? And the film thing is a good point. Sometimes the cast will step off if it's not the coverage. So it is good, absolutely listen, but at a certain point you will be screwed if it's so. You know, developing the next step, of course, of being, and this is where your visualization is so damn helpful. And same for auditions. You know, a lot of readers are actors, but they're not really, because they don't want to steal it, right? So in a lot of ways, as an actor, yes, you must listen, and it's amazing, because after a while, you're not cynical, but you're like, okay, and you're just used to kind of people phoning it in, and then you do get an actor who's with you, and you're like, oh wow, and it makes your life so much easier. But it's like these scenarios, which I think are more common than not, depending on where you fit in. Of course, if you're a lead, you're going to have more time with your co-stars. But if you're a daily player, which, you know, a lot of actors are going to be, the director doesn't talk to you very much. The leads are generally very nice, but like the leads save it because they have a long day, long blocks. So you gotta be your own fire. Just throwing that in there. And also, there's one other thing I wanted to add. Interestingly, she was talking about the surprise thing, and it made me think. There's a bunch of data that suggests that even making the faces of emotions actually triggers an emotion in
Oh,
people,
yeah.
right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's like a two-way street. So you can kind of get from inside out, but sometimes just doing the thing itself
Yes.
will spark it. Just as any actors out there who are developing, if you can't find the fire inside right away, try aping it and then see where that leads. Just throwing it. Okay, so number one, listen, right? Yeah, listen and listen. And how can you serve your scene partner, right? I think that's great. Okay, and what would you tell them next?
The second thing is, again, visualization, right? So we live in an imaginary world when we're acting. So the part of being present in that imaginary world is actually living in it, right? So you don't need to be drowning or imagine that you're drowning and causing yourself incredible stress and physical harm, but you need to imagine that you're at least swimming, right?
Yes.
So you need to be immersed in it enough because your brain knows what's real and what's not, but it likes to play. Think of it as a dream, right? We're in a active dream state where things are happening that we know are not real, but we kind of feel like it's real. So that's where you have to be. So you have to be in a scene with the other person. You have to be influenced by everything that's going on. You have to listen and be really active participant in it. And then you have to imagine. So the imagination is that secondary thing that's incredibly important. Like I'm the guy that picks up on energy. I'm the guy that's very visual. So for me, that part works. And if I'm not getting anything from the other person, the imagination steps in and you just kind of place on top of that person somebody that gives you something, and then you work with that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, and one of the quotes on Instagram, I do acting quotes all the time from other actors, and I don't remember exactly who said it. I need to find it, but like the gist of it was, if the person you're playing against is a block, then you paint something on it.
That's
Then
good.
it's basically it's your job as an actor to do it because that's a part of your professionalism, that's a part of your process. So those are two things. And then
let me ask a question here about you. So I think I'm fairly imaginative, and I suspect you'd say the same of yourself.
yeah
And we were both young kids dreaming of being actors, so there's a lot of dreams there.
yeah
Did you ever find yourself in school kind of drifting off into like your own little reveries all the time, eh?
yeah.
So, and what did you find stoked your imagination? Like what got the pistons firing, if you will? Things
yeah
and
so
things that improved it or things that opened it. Do you remember any of those things? It's hard because we were young, but is there anything you can pinpoint?
so it's a two-part answer, right? So from
Yeah.
the acting perspective, I'll come to it as a second part. But as a kid, it's anything. So I really loved, and I think Da Vinci was doing that too. Is he was kind of doodling, right? And he would just draw a bunch of lines that for no particular reason, and then he tried to see what is in those lines, right? When the same way that we're looking at clouds and then shapes start to appear and present themselves. So I would do that and I would lose myself in it. Like I'm doing it now, and then I see, from these doodles for no particular reason, it's just, kind of drawing some stuff out. I'm like, wow, that looks like a sail of a ship, right? Or that looks like a leaf of a vegetable. This particular
Hold
one.
it up.
Yeah.
Can you hold it for us?
Right.
Oh, this thing down. This. So you just randomly drew those.
Yeah, just randomly drew for no particular reason, whatever is, this is kind of the subconscious thing. So I would drift away into that, and then the imagination fills it in, right? So it fills in the piece, or somebody would, a teacher would say something, and then in a music class, right? You're listening to music, and the music just takes you somewhere. So that would be a trigger. So classical music, again, I went through my elementary education and middle education in the former Soviet Union. So, classical music was a part of the curriculum from almost day one. And that puts you in a completely kind of different state and you drift off somewhere. So those were the pieces that I remember for sure. And then as an actor, the imagination part, I thought, because I'm also a writer, so imagination I thought should be so easy for me as an actor, but it wasn't. Not until, and I realized why, because I was putting myself into the, well, that would be acceptable and this would not be acceptable. And it took me just getting to a point where I don't give a fuck and I'm going to do whatever comes to me at that particular moment. The way for things to stay fresh is for you not to be a robot and for you to be open to whatever comes in. I remember doing a scene which I completely loved, and that was one of the reasons why I passed, one of my theater classes. That they didn't know whether they were going to get me to the next level because they said you're still in your head. And then I went into a scene, and the person was setting up a party, and I just decided, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do whatever comes to mind. And I'm not going to think about it. And I'm not going to try to judge it as it comes and decide what I do after it. I'm just going to do it. Again, as long as everything is safe and you're not, trying to.
Yeah, you're not swinging weapons around or doing random fight choreo. Yes, I mean, to interject, it sounds crazy to say that, but actually, no. Like, there are some actors, like, you must not go past those boundaries. I know it's all cool, but you can't be around just slapping people without talking to them first, right?
Don't invade somebody's personal space. Like, focus on a very simple rule of thumb. Don't be a dick.
Well, look, it sounds obvious, but that to me, I'm like, well, depends on your threshold. Like, I don't mind people challenging my political views, for example. I'm like, yeah, go for it. Some people find that incredibly offensive. So it's like, that's why do the check-in with your scene partner. Actually, I was like a commander on Handmaids recently, so I'll be on that, which is nice. I think they cut out all my lines or whatever, but it was a good day. But there was an intimate-ish scene. There's like this party, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers because they'll kill me. They're actually, to be honest, they were a wonderful production, very accommodating. I had a great time. But it was like, there's some dancing, which I didn't like, but there was an attractive girl there, and we were like, okay, we just met on the day, right? And we all like wearing our masks because it's hyper COVID, and I'm like, okay, well, they kind of want this, here's what I'm going to, so we kind of chatted through it, and it was okay. And so always talk first. But sorry, I didn't mean to interject. So in that case, you were like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do what I want, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
And you did.
So what I did, and it surprised the heck out of me, and that's the discovery part, right? So what I did is, I'm walking in, I have no particular thing, right? I'm there, I'm just, I'm walking in with my own thought before I walk into the scene, but that's about it. And the rest is just, we're gonna figure it out. The person wants something from me, I don't know what that is, so I need to figure that out. They're setting up a scene, they look like they're being upset. I'm trying to figure out, I was like, why are you upset? What's happening? Then I decide, well, they're setting up. I'm gonna help them, decorate. Then I see that they're setting up a table, and on the table there's, lettuce leaves, there's some cake, there's some other stuff. So, I'm setting up, and I'm like, yeah, a thought comes in. I'm grabbing a lettuce leaf and I start eating it as I'm talking to the person. And I'm like, yeah, it feels completely natural. That's the first thing that came to mind. I'm doing it, and the person got affected by it, so that made the scene more interested. And people are like, ooh, where is this going? I have no idea where this is going. We're just going to see where it goes. And then the next thought that comes into my mind is, I want cake. So I grab a piece of cake. I have salad, a leaf in one hand. I have a piece of cake in the other. The audience goes like, no. So I stuff the cake into my mouth with the lettuce. The whole thing it became alive. And I felt so in that particular scene because I was completely out of my head. I was just being. So when, as an actor, are told to don't act, just be, I understood what that meant. And what being meant to me was get out of your head, be fully present, whatever comes into your mind, do. Now, if we have lines, if we have particular blocking, we need to do that. But still, you have to be that within it. and then it becomes real, and then it becomes something interesting for people to watch.
Yeah, free. So, and to that, there's the second part of the question I want to get to from you.
Mhm.
But again, for a lot of young actors, it's hard because, like, for example, I think one of the best ways to get over yourself is to watch yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of actors, and even listening, same thing with voiceover, like almost every human, they see themselves like, oh, Jesus, no. Or they hear themselves like, really?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to get there because you eventually, like you say, you stop giving the fuck. Because it's a weird thing. If you were to think every day, while you're walking on the street, like your posture, it would be hell. And this is
Yeah.
what acting sort of is, like, people are watching me, right? And it's subconscious. And obviously, as you get older and you develop, and if it's in you, you will shed that. But the thing to understand is, like, you're just gonna have to watch yourself. Just watch yourself, and then watch yourself fuck up,
Mhm.
and that'll cure you, right?
Yeah.
Just watch it. You're like, I can't watch it. No, watch, because then you can learn. You're like, oh, my eye's doing this or whatever. Like, no one notices. But there'll be other things you might notice, like, why does it look like my spine is a metal rod? Like, well, there's something you might want to work on, right? Okay. So visualization, imagination.
Yeah.
And is there anything else? Because here's the thing. So not everyone, is as imaginative inherently as other people. And you're a writer too, as am I. And I think just another sliver in this conversation.
Mhm.
That sense of being everything is the writer, right?
Yeah.
So let's put a pin in that because I think that'll be interesting to talk about too. So did you find anything in your experience? Because you said the conversion from writing to acting.
Yeah.
You're very good at this camera thing. I'm still figuring it out. This imaginative situation. Did you find there was any exercise or experience that you had that suddenly helped improve your actor imagination? There's like a horn ceremony of some, I think, here. So talk a bit about that if you have anything.
Absolutely, because it just unlocked that part of my brain, and then I was ready to write a novel because it was so interesting.
Was it this particular experience that just popped the brain? Another one.
Same class, but it was not this particular scene. So what they basically said is that, listen, start with a thought and then come up with a backstory for why, right? So what I did is, my thought is, okay, you start kind of you start feeling, before you walk into the room, you start feeling like, okay, what do I feel like right now? I feel nervous. Why am I feeling nervous? I feel nervous because, and then imagination starts kicking in. I feel nervous because I just witnessed an accident outside. Shit, and that accident, man, is that man okay? What happened to that man? I saw that, oh my God, that leg. Ooh, this is going to be a serious injury. But why did that happen? And then whole thing starts filling in. And as soon as you kind of click into it, and then boom, imagination takes over, and then the writing takes over, and then you're like, okay, but what happened was that man, the reason why it happened, and the reason this driver wasn't paying attention, and it's because that light, didn't work, and you had the flickering here, and then the whole universe starts creating. So my imagination as an actor was never in, I'm looking at the lines, I'm trying to learn my lines, I'm trying to understand the character. None of the imagination just didn't come into it. And I couldn't figure out why it didn't feel real and why like that piece was missing. And it came in only as I started saying, why? What happened? And then boom, everything came in. So that why, and that's the other thing to tell actors is whatever backstory, whatever you have that's in the script, create more, because that's when you're going to start filling in so many gaps, and you're going to see this person, and this person is serious, or their daughter just died, and some of you are going to go to, well, I have a daughter, I can imagine that. Yeah, that'll work for you for some takes. It's not going to work for all of the takes because your emotions and the ability to access them, it's not going to be fresh all the time, but imagination will. And imagination will flow through you just asking why. That's interesting. Let's explore that. And that's kind of where you're coming into it of, I just want to play, I want to experience it, I want to think it through. And then your neurons start firing and you're creating this whole other world. and then it's so much easier to be in it and to be, because you've created this whole place and you know your way around. So that's the fun part of it. I don't have to worry about, okay, now I have to think it through and break everything down. That's tedious and you're not going to enjoy it. Just ask the question why and go from there.
Yeah, that's great. And it makes me think of ways of doing it. I'm trying to remember my experience. I remember I was always told, like, you should be like this. I was like, okay. And I sensed that there was something people were after to improve me, of course.
Right.
And it wasn't until I had understanding of it, and this is the hard thing, especially for young actors. There's so many frames of reference that one accumulates over time and experience. Now, you will find that some particularly precocious actors at a very young age are predisposed for temperamental reasons or have had very specific life conditions that can sort of facilitate an acceleration of experience, which we don't all have access to. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, I can tell it's, you know, and the writer in you too. For example, let's say we had a script, right? We had, we had a scene or whatever, and we're like, but Jim actually he lost his brother when he was 6 years old. You're like, oh crap, I got to go through and make like a ton of little tweaks that right. So we see that and instantly we go down the line. I think, and that's like, I think that takes honing, right? So for a young actor hearing this, like, oh my God, I can't make this world. Am I going to fail? And I say to them, I'm like, no, but here's helpful too, right? So you were talking earlier about substitution, what I do, right? And it's like, you ask a 17-year-old, what would you do if your parents died in a horrible car crash? Like, it's not that they couldn't imagine it per se, but it's like, I mean, that's a tough one. Now, again, you can get by, like, put some tears on there, like, whatever will spank you, make you upset, whatever the hell it is, right? Okay, we can get by. But fundamentally, but if you don't find that perhaps these things come easily to you, then you just pilfer, right? You take other people's experiences, right? And this is a good way of, and this is why I'm always, and this is what I'm doing to you, but it's also like, I think it's really helpful to ask other people about their experiences.
Hence the point of the show.
Your entire gig, right? You're like, bang. So you're obviously on the train here, but for those that, like, it might not be obvious, but it's finding a way. And it's not just like, there's the things like, how do you technically do this? But I find that if you ask people about their lives, and it's like outside of it, right? Like, you say things like, yeah, it starts silly, but it can get real fun. But it's like, what's your favorite memory from this year, right? Or like, what about that? If you can find ways to go there, and again, people don't always have the answers, but the way we spin the response, I think is very helpful. And the more of those you can acquire, I think you can start to put them in. Like, as an actor, even still, like, you see a show and you watch something that an actor did, you're like, oh, that's good. Oh, I like that. And I remember one of my favorite ones was, and it's tiny, and it's from Lord of the Rings, and Sir Ian McKellen, I love him. He was Gandalf, and it's when he came back, again, this is very old, so spoilers, forget it. But he comes back from being Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White.
Yeah.
And it's like he was reborn. And then he says, but I am Gandalf the White. Like, he says it like it's a dirty little secret, right? Like a child being like, but this? And I was like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's so tiny, but I'm like, what a choice. And how does he get there and so forth? So you watch those master actors and try to, retroactively, like, what do you call it when you move back? Retroactively construct how they got there. And these are like little exercises, because it's like we say, have imagination. Yeah. How do you do it? So I think these are some ways that you can actually practice it, because it does get easier. And the fear is, look, if I suck at this, that means it's never going to be easy for me. Like, no. Again, I'm never going to be able to swim like Michael Phelps. It's not going to happen. He's a mutant. And like, he has weird things where lactic acid only builds up at a third of the rate as normal human beings. but I can still be a damn good swimmer. Now, again, acting ain't swimming, right? So you don't have to be Michael Phelps, but the more you exercise a faculty, the stronger it gets, which is why you should always try 100% effort. Always put it in. It won't be there at the beginning, but as you go, the boundary gets further and further and further. Okay, yeah. So that, the imagination thing, I think those are some, and you probably read a lot too, right?
Not as much as I need to, but
well, you're talking to actors, but again, like, yeah, and again, that's the thing. I don't mean to shame anybody. You don't have to read a trillion books a year. That's not what I mean. But it's another one of those things that's helpful for getting in someone's mind. That's all.
Right.
It's another avenue.
This is my vehicle, so I learn by osmosis.
Yeah. Well, look, and everyone's a different learner too. Some people are auditory. You mentioned that you're visual. Participation is also huge, I've learned. And I'm trying to find ways to work that into contemporary performance. It's kind of a bigger question, but involvement, especially with learning, goes a long way. Like, and this is why I do. I just finished teaching a voiceover course at the end of last year, and I was just like, in the booth, do it. And those who did their homework, you know, they came out on top. So do it. Okay, so
let's do because I'm looking at the clock, and we've had this conversation, which you and I can go for another hour and a half, very simply, and enjoy every moment of it. But for those watching, let's wrap up with something, and then we'll have you back for another one, so we can continue it. So I wanted for people to enjoy the singing part of your repertoire, if you're open to it.
Sure.
Me being and you know, I'm in the tenor, you know, maybe baritone. Sometimes I wake up and I sound much deeper, and then my favorite joke is there's Barry White and there's very White.
Oh shoot.
Yes. So that's my favorite, you know.
You want to be a tenor. Tenors make way more money, and they get way more love interests. So fight for tenor. I'm telling you, that's where it's at.
Sounds good. Now I only have to learn how to sing well.
That's time. I know some people.
Yes, yeah, we'll talk offline. So there are a couple of songs that I love that sound great with bass, and I do them, you know, myself, not very well, but I enjoy it. So I would like for somebody who actually knows how to do them to do them. So would you mind, or would you be open to doing either Summertime or 16 Tons? You know, whichever you like, or at least a part of it.
I'd have to hear it. I'd have to hear them.
So Summertime.
You sing it to me, I'll sing it back. Here we go. We'll be participatory here. We'll do a duet.
Okay, I apologize to everybody watching this. My wife will not be watching it, and if she is, she's probably cringing just even thinking.
Be more supportive.
Summertime. That was horrible. And the living is easy.
Summertime. And the living is easy.
Fish are jumping and the cotton is high.
Things are jumping and the cotton is high.
Your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking.
Your daddy's rich and your mommy's good looking.
So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Very cool. All right,
so we did all the modulations, but It's rough, a rough approximation.
No. And let's do 16 tons. So 16 tons was, I don't know, 1950s or something. No, that's not true. 1960s. So somewhere in there. Johnny Cash, I think, was 16 tons. How does it start? Man-made. I'm gonna look up the start.
Do it.
I know the chorus. I need to look up the start. 16 tons. 16 tons lyrics. There we are. Oh, some people say a man is made out of mud. Oh, man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go. I owe my soul to the company store.
All right, give me the 16 tons thing. 2 lines at a time, and we'll give it a shot.
Well, I think maybe it's easier for you to grab it. So look it up. So you have you.
Okay. I don't know the melody. I'm bad at this. It's like all my listening has been classical for years. I have a weird eclectic thing of music where it's like, you don't know that? I'm like, no.
Yeah. Well,
I like you singing to me though. I like you singing to me.
Thank you. So it was actually done by Tennessee Ernie Ford first, and then Johnny Cash did his own version of it. So you load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older.
Sing it to me. You gotta sing it to me. I'll sing. We'll do a sing and recall. Yeah, sing it back. Yeah.
You load 16 tons. What do you get?
You load 16 tons. What do you get?
Another day older and deeper in debt.
Another day older and deeper in debt.
St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go.
St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go.
I owe my soul to the company store.
I owe my soul to the company store.
Yeah. So here's your homework if you want to do it. Grab that song, record it, and we're gonna plug it in
Okay.
if you want to. But these are great great songs. Summertime is fabulous.
I think I injured your dog.
Yeah, my dog obviously sees somebody outside, so
Oh, I thought it was from my crooning.
Oh, sorry. Did you say something about my dog?
I said I thought I pissed off your dog with my crooning.
No. My dog loves crooning because I do it all the time, as you can hear, not very well, but I enjoy
don't sell yourself short.
Huh?
I'd love to hear you in a tenor thing, though. Okay, how's this? You send me those songs, and what's a great, do you do rock?
I do. So
Or you prefer like musical theater?
yeah, I love crooners. I love musical theater, and I find that my vocal quality, and I'm going to do a terrible job at insulting somebody who's brilliant at singing that everybody knows. But Neil Diamond, when I do Neil Diamond, for at least to me, it sounds very similar. Now, obviously, he knows how to sing. I am not good at it, but the vocal quality sounds similar, like Love on the Rocks, or Coming to America. Like I sing whatever tone or note that is in, or whatever key that's in, that works well for me. Some things that like my goodness, love, right? LOVE, and chestnuts roasting in an open fire, Nat King Cole, like Nat King Cole. So I do those, fairly well. So I don't know again what key. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But those things I can handle better than others. Let's put it.
Great. Well, okay. You send me those ones, and for the next one, you can have one of those ready, and I'll have 16 tons ready for you.
Sounds good. You got it. So which one will I do? I'll do Love on the Rocks.
All right. It's a date.
The musical date. I like it. All right.
Also, we won't get nailed for copyright stuff, will we? If we do too much of that? Okay, it might have to be a cappella.
Yeah, and we're gonna say who it is. All we're doing is just
YouTube can be pretty harsh about that stuff, but yeah, we're just having a good time. Shouldn't be a problem.
I'm just doing an injustice to amazing singers, so that's what I'm doing here.
Well, that's what they get for being so high and mighty, right?
Yeah,
That's what it is. Yeah.
Listen, it's been a joy talking to you. It's nice to talk shop. It's nice to talk craft. It's nice to talk to other actors and just geek out. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have the show. So thank you for giving me that experience.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing. Thank you for sharing so much of your own. You can tell I'm getting tired. The tongue's getting thick. Thank you for sharing with us all that stuff about you too. It's been pretty insightful, and it's nice to hear that the trajectories are similar. We're all sort of finding the same things, and it's like just finding different ways of communicating them so they're accessible to all.
Perfect.
Okay, bye everybody. Thank you so much for enduring an hour and 40 minutes of me gabbing, and have a great week.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We appreciate it. Take care. Bye.